Good morning, student. In previous videos, we discussed about the male and female reproductive organ of the flower and also formation of gamete, how gametes are formed in the plants and their reproductive organs and their structure study also. Now, after the discuss male and female reproductive organ or gamete, today we start next topic. So next topic is pollination. So what is pollination? Pollination means transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma. Some students already know pollination, but in this class we pollination discuss in a broad cases. Okay, so pollination in the pollination, which is pollen grains means male gamete. Okay, pollen grains means male gamete. These male gamete how transfer from one place to the another place by many agencies like air, winds, etc. Okay, so first look at this place. What is pollination? Okay, so pollination means क्या होगा? Pollination means the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is called pollination. Okay, pollination are two types. Okay, pollination are two types. Number one, self pollination. Second is cross pollination. Okay, self pollination. What is self pollination? When the transfer of pollen grain, look at this please, I explain with the example or pictures. This is a plant, or this plant have one bisexual flower. This plant have one bisexual flower, more bisexual flower. This flower consists one male. This is the male reproductive part. This is a female reproductive part. So when the transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma, this type of pollination is called the self pollination. And also, if this plant consists, this is the one flower and this is the second flower, and these flower consist male and female. This is the male, or this is the female. This place also male, this is female. So when the transfer of anther, when the transfer of pollen is not anther, the transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma, when the transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma, so this type of pollination is also known as the self pollination. Okay, so in the same plant, one thing you remember that in same plant transfer of pollen grain, okay, transfer of pollen grain from one flower to the another flower in the same plant, that type of pollination is also called the self pollination. But self pollination is the two type. One is autogamy. What do you mean by the autogamy? Okay, when the transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma in the same flower, that type of pollination is called the autogamy. And when transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma in different flower. Look at this, different flower, these are the different flower. So when the transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma in different flower of the same plant, that type of pollination is known as the geitonogamy. Okay, this is the geitonogamy. Okay, this is the example of the autogamy, or this is the example of the geitonogamy. Okay, now we discuss here autogamy again. In autogamy there are three types of method. There are three methods involved in the autogamy. Number one, homogamy. Number two, clistogamy. Or number three, bud pollination. Okay, so we discuss homogamy. In this method, anther and stigma of flowers are brought together by growth bending. Okay, so in this method anther and stigma, okay, anther in this method anther and stigma are brought together by growth or bending. Okay, in clistogamy in this method flowers are closed flower. These flowers have no fragrance, colorless flower, and male and female reproductive organ before opening the flower are fertilized. In bud pollination also similar as a clistogamy, because so in bud pollination is also similar to the clistogamy. In clistogamy in bud pollination sex organs are before mature after opening of the buds. Okay, now we discuss next is a cross pollination. Cross pollination means the transfer of, look at this well, first look at this place. Here is a two plant. Okay, one is a this plant, this is a flower. So this is the male, this is a female, it's a female flower. So transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of different plant, of different flower, of the same species, that type of pollination known as the cross pollination. Okay, understand? When the transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of different flower or different plant of the same species, that type of pollination is called the cross pollination. Cross pollination is also known as xenogamy. Okay, thank you students.